Be sure to click on the link in the description to find all of these blueprints. You can either go directly to the downloadable PDF files, or you can go to the video which explains how to print these out to a 1:1 scale. So this is my basic slider template, I guess you could say. So make a 16 layer thick piece of stacked hardened paper, and I achieved that by folding a paper once this way, gluing it and folding it this way, and then I glued 4 of those together. Also, make sure you put like a textbook or something over the piece you just folded, and keep it like that overnight. So just go ahead and cut out the basic shape just around the outside, and now I'm going to glue it to here. After you glue it on here, you can start to cut the edges, and make sure after you cut the edges you go over it with some super glue just like this. You should pretty much do this for every part if you want all of the layers to stay together. Then do a little bit of compressing. So don't cut these shapes out right here quite yet. It's better to do that after you get it to fit inside. So after everything's cut out completely, except for these 2 parts, don't do that yet, you want to coat everything in super glue like you normally would. And if I put this in here, just to demonstrate, if I push the slider all the way back, it is at the very tip of this lock. And on my older hidden blade I had it stop halfway, but technically you should get more power doing it this way. So when it goes all the way forward, it's at that position on this lock now. Instead of having a gradual slope to unlock this lock, I'm using a 500,000th radius circle. In other words, half of an inch. So it unlocks it at the last second and knocks the blade back or forward. Like I said before, I wanted to put a little extra piece on the lower part underneath the slider. So I have that cut here, and it is the width from this inside of the wall to this inside of the wall. So that will go just like this, and this will be glued on top of only that section, so it'll work as a step. To glue this piece on the bottom of the slider, you need to make sure it fits in here nice and smooth. I could still use a little bit more sanding, but you can see that. And you need to remember when you put the slider on here, there's going to need to be a little bit of trimming around this area right there. Make sure the lock is engaging this part of the slider, not this piece right there. So that will be cut. So I'm going to glue that on there right now, and you'll get to see what it looks like. That's what it looks like after it's glued on. And when I put this in here, just like this, you can see it still has a little bit of friction, so that'll be easy to fix. Just do what you normally do and sand it down. And you can see the little pieces there behind the slider. Those need to be trimmed down to this edge right here. And you can do that just by cutting it like this or carving it or whatever. So after cutting out the little back piece right there, it's good to peel off a few layers here, so it will be probably around 20 to 30 thousandths of an inch thick, just this little bottom piece you see on there. That way you can put a piece on these sliding pieces that will push the blade forward and it won't, rub on the slider. Now after you get this to go in here nice and smooth, this could still use a little bit of work, but that's good enough for demonstration. If I push this all the way forward, you can see this bottom piece pushes on there and it's not going to go any further. And as you can see, this isn't pushing the lock all the way. So essentially you need to mark however more this needs to go over on this back piece right there and cut out a little notch so it can go over that, just like this blade part we did earlier. So there's the drawn on section piece right there that will allow clearance. And to cut it, you just line up the blade on the line you drew. Alright, there it is. Now it goes forward without any interference. You can see this lock is unlocked completely and stops right there at the end, and this one does too. So that's how these locks unlock, in case you didn't know exactly how the slider works. It's a sloped surface, and like I said before, it's a more rapid sloped surface toward the end to allow more tension to be built. So there's the cutout right there, and now we can start cutting out these shapes right here. And you just go all the way through, and just in case you guys are wondering, this middle part right here goes out an extra 100 thousandths from these 2 points. So if you were to visualize a straight line going from this to this, there would be an extra 100 thousandths of an inch. Mainly so it can go over all the way. You can see how it touches the wall right there, but not right there or there. So I'm going to cut out this one, or whichever one first, it doesn't matter. Here's what it looks like when it's cut out, and I have to do it on the other side too. And basically just do a little bit of polish work on it, make sure it's nice and smooth. Has the little piece, you know, right there, so it will be able to ride on here and keep it extra stabilized. After you cut both of them out, they should look something like this, and then you can go ahead and make a 16 layer stacked up card. We are going to be making a piece that looks like this, so you need your 16 layer card. And the entire length is going to be 2.100, including the length of the hook. This is half of an inch coming from this part out to the end, and the paper part itself is 1.600, so that is this. So here it is. If it's just like this, I know this is a bad drawing, but alright, so it should be 210 thousandths of an inch tall, which is exactly the height of these long walls inside. And it should be, if I turn it just like this would be this view, and this should be 0.175. That means that when we make this piece, it needs to slide in here with little to no friction. So like I've said in older videos, I found some rusty wire, and this is 70 thousandths of an inch in diameter. So all I'm going to do is clip it however long you need to, just like that. I cut out 3 16 layer pieces from this that I just folded, and each one of them is 210 thousandths of an inch this direction and 1.600 this direction. Now I'd recommend sanding the rust off of here, but I'll do that off camera so it's not boring. So what you're going to want to do is, since you have these 3 16 layer pieces, you want to measure up from the bottom of one of these. It's going to be the middle one though, just like that. You're going to measure up 70 thousandths of an inch, just like that. So we'll move it over. So at 70 thousandths, going from here over, there's the line right there. So you just cut that part off. So now we should be left over with a piece that looks just like this. So if I move this all the way up to the top or over to one side, you can see there's a gap there. And that gap should be enough to fit this wire, as it should be 70 thousandths. And then this would go on the other side that would hold this thick gauge wire. This comes out of the end half of an inch, so we just need to bend it up, and the curve is about 1/4 of an inch, so half of this entire distance. So obviously if this is rusty, sand it off, and if it's not, then you have nothing to worry about. So what you want to start off doing is bending it in an area just like this. As this is becoming more and more bent, you can see I gave myself more room so I would have more leverage. So I'm bending it all the way at the end. I'm going to measure over 0.25 or 1/4 of an inch so I can determine where to cut it. So just like that, and wherever it ends up there, you just cut it. Cut the rest off of the short side. Here it is. I went ahead and trimmed this side off a little bit too, so it will look better, and that needs a little bit of like filing or trimming or whatever. So this should come out of the end 500 thousandths of an inch or 1/2 of an inch. So what you want to do is glue this onto the very bottom of this, and you can use your calipers or a ruler and use the depth indicating part, I guess, and put it just like this, and that's where it would have to be as far as this direction goes. So you just move it all the way to the bottom and glue it on there. So there it is, glued on just the bottom part. And by the way, this is the same exact wire that I used for the pins on the locks. So it's 70 thousandths of an inch thick, which means 16 layers is about equivalent to that. So if I glue this here, which is where I'm gluing it, there should be clearance, just like that, and this should be flat. So I'm going to glue this middle piece in there. And now I can glue this other side on, and obviously some trimming and finish work needs to be done. After everything's glued together like this, it's a really rough shape, so you want to polish it up and make it look good. But first of all, since this is 3 16-layer pieces glued together, you need to bring it down to the right dimension. So you need to measure how much this is and subtract this from that number and divide it by 2. And that is how much you need to take off of each side in order to keep this centered. So I took some material off the sides, and now it's not nearly as much friction, little to no friction actually. So now you just want to sand it a little bit and get a nice smooth finish on it. Once this is all smooth and polished up, and this piece here, you want to glue it on. Since this is the front one, it's going to go on like this. You can see how that comes out just like that. This will be glued on right here. So the hook is on the bottom. This will form a little rail on this other side, just like that. I don't know if you can see that, but that's what rides on the long wall right here. This is what it looks like when that flat piece is glued on top, and it looks pretty good actually. So I went ahead and did it to both of them just to save time. So you can see the little rail piece right there, sort of, and that helps stabilize it on this wall so it's not going, just random places. So I will represent this with this super strong rubber band. No, I'm just kidding, but I'm gonna show you. So it hooks on just like this, and that's how it should work. This one's still a little bit, needs some sanding. Alright, that's what it looks like. This is what is going to spring the blade forward and backward. So when this is in there, it moves independently. So if I hold this in place, and it would be pushed back further, it would be back more like this. Still needs some sanding, but so if I push there and pull this down, it moves independently, and if I let go, it springs forward. So on these sliding pieces here, excluding the slider right now, you need a little piece on the bottom of these, and I just drew a line on the top so you could kind of see. So basically, where this corner is where a straight line needs to be drawn. You don't necessarily have to draw a straight line, but you need to build a piece like this. So you just use a scrap 16 layer stacked up piece, one that we made earlier if you want to. It needs to be 0.330, so 330 thousandths of an inch from here going down to that corner. And then the width needs to be 0.460, so from this edge here over 0.460. But remember, it's going to be glued on the bottom part. So this little piece here will go right here, and it will be permanently glued there. So that's what it looks like right there. And since we did the step on the slider like this, you need to take a little bit off of the bottom of this, the piece that we just glued on. So if you didn't do the step, then you don't have to worry about that, but you only have to take off just a little bit. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that and then glue on the other one. This square drawn on the bottom of the blade itself is what makes the whole thing work, at least the going in and out. This is what makes it dual action. So how you establish this is you line everything up, you put the slider in, you don't need to put a rubber band in or anything, and you put the piece, whichever one first, and you push it all the way back to its position back here. And then you can remove the rest of the slider like this, and where that rectangular piece we glued on there earlier engages, you can see if the blade is pushed to the lock, it lines up right there. So I drew a line there, and the front, as you can see, make sure when you bring it back or forward, you push the blade all the way back so it is touching the lock in order to ensure that this is in the right place. So hold that in place, remove the slider, and you can see where the line engages, or right there, see? So I just drew that, and then you make it whatever the width of the piece on here is, which is how I got those two lines. So now we get to glue on a piece that looks just like that. That's what it looks like, as you can see, and it will be glued on there just like that. And it just happens to be 0.600 from here to here, which is this direction on the blade, and from here to here it is 0.460. So that just goes to show that so far we've been pretty accurate. So that's what it looks like when it's glued on there. So as you can see, the blade still functions completely normal, but if I put these in here, these two sliding components, it will latch on right there, and that gives me the opportunity to put the slider on here. Alright, there you have it. Now the only reason the retraction doesn't work right now is you might see this little modification right there. That little piece that's glued on there. Not a lot of people that make hidden blades explain this, but when the slider goes forward and this pushes on the lock, it's going to prevent it from pivoting and locking and keeping the blade there. So the way I fixed that, I made it relatively simple. It is 200 thousandths of an inch from here to here, so that gap right there, and then it's 100 thousandths of an inch from the edge of this to where this is. So it's a relatively easy cutout. So all you need to do is make a little piece like that. It's slightly smaller than those two dimensions, but just enough so it can fit inside, just like that one. So I took the lock out so I could glue this really tiny piece on here. And remember, it's 200 thousandths of an inch long and 100 thousandths of an inch wide. So it will be able to fit in this groove, just like this one, as you can see. So see how this one goes forward and it goes in that little groove? Well, this one will go back and go in that little groove. So I'm going to glue it on right there, and it will be touching this wall. So now it's on there, as you can see. Just try and move it around a little bit. Just like that. See how it slides over? So now I'm going to quickly cut out this oval shape. As you can see, after the oval is cut out, the dual action works.